The Philadelphia Eagles have filled their offensive coordinator job, but the Colts could still be in jeopardy of losing one or two of their assistants on staff. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network around. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football in FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks, your resident Phil nerd of HorseshoeHuddle.com and your favorite co-host here at the Locked On Colts podcast. Today, we're going to be diving into the Colts assistant rumors and discussions out there. I realize that Jake and I haven't really gone too much detail into Jim Bob Cooter's interviews that he's had this offseason, Alex Tanney getting an interview request, and also looking at some potential defensive line coaches with kind of the market established out there. So we're going to look at just kind of this coaching carousel for the Colts this offseason. Then I'm going to dive into Alec Pierce and how I missed the Colts squad show the other night when they really talked about wide receiver and Alec Pierce. So I want to give my 2 cents on the Colts young wide receiver that's set to hit free agency. Pro Football Focus also released a new projection for his contract on the open market. So I'm going to dive into that a little bit. And then our prospect of the day. You know, Jake has been talking all about these prospects all week, and I really want to dip my toes into talking about a prospect. So we're going to talk about our 2026 draft prospect of the day as well. But first, let's talk about these Colts assistants. So the Philadelphia Eagles filled their vacant offensive coordinator job with Sean Mannion from the Green Bay Packers. So that means Jim Bob Cooter, who was a finalist for that job, is out of the running. But as soon as that was announced, it was announced that Jim Bob Cooter has an interview scheduled with the New York Giants for their vacant offensive coordinator job. And at the same time, Alex Tanney, the Colts passing game coordinator, will also be interviewing with the Giants this week. So it seems like those two candidates are firmly in the running for that vacancy there. And the Colts would, potentially lose one of those guys, could maybe lose 2 of them, because aside from the Giants, there are other offensive coordinator openings around the league. And there's still 2 more head coach openings that need to be filled with the Las Vegas Raiders and the Arizona Cardinals. So say if the Cardinals go with a defensive head coach, that is another vacancy that would need to be filled at offensive coordinator. That could be a play calling position for someone like Tanney or Bob Cooter to fill in. So the Colts are not out of the woods yet when it comes to losing one of their top offensive minds. But it looks like Tanney and Jim Bob Cooter are both going to be in play, at least for the New York Giants. So if Jim Bob does leave this offseason, who would be the next offensive coordinator in-house for the Colts? Well, obviously, Alex Tanney has that relationship with Shane Steichen that dates back well over 10 years. He worked on those Philadelphia teams with Steichen as well. And then also he's the passing game coordinator, was brought over here specifically for that. He would seem to be the next guy up internally for offensive coordinator if Jim Bob Cooter were to leave. Personally, though, I would prefer to promote Tom Manning. Tom Manning is a guy who is the tight end coach currently for the Colts. He worked under Frank Reich a couple years ago, has play calling experience back at Iowa State at the college level under Matt Campbell, and then came back to the NFL, and he's been a big part of how the Colts run a lot of things internally, from their short yardage playbook to their pre-snap motion. Tom Manning has been instrumental in those areas, and I think with the type of offense the Colts want to play, and with Manning's background, I'd prefer Tom Manning elevated to that role. But either way, like if it's Alex Tanney, if it's Tom Manning, either one I think would be perfectly fine in that role for the Colts. Now, if Alex Tanney were to get the New York Giants job, then it kind of gets interesting with the passing game coordinator position, because that's not a position that the Colts have always had on the roster or on the coaching staff. So this could be a spot where the Colts just don't have a replacement in-house or a replacement even outside, because it's not a position that's like desperately needed. But I could see someone like Kevin Patullo, who was the Eagles offense coordinator this last year. I know people hate his name right now, but as a passing game coordinator, he could be fine in that role. He served in that role earlier in his career with the Colts, and he's worked with Shane Steichen in the past as well. So I could see Kevin Patullo in that role. This could probably be a role for Phillip Rivers if Rivers wanted to coach in the NFL this year. I'm still not fully convinced that he would be open to coaching in the NFL. because it is his son's final year in high school. He's been coaching that high school team. I still think he's going to give it one more full season at that high school level before coming up to the NFL next year as a coach. But this is where I prefer him more as a passing game coordinator rather than an offensive coordinator right out the gate. So if Phillip Rivers were willing and the Colts lost Alex Tanney, I'd be more than welcome to bring him on as the passing game coordinator for this next season. But then again, like, no replacement does probably make the most sense when it comes to Tanney's position, just because it is a position that the Colts have traditionally not had on the roster outside of, again, I think Frank Reich's that Kevin Patullo was the passing game coordinator with the Colts, but besides that, like, they really haven't had that role on the offensive staff. So we'll see if they end up losing Tanney to New York, like if they do actually fill that position either internally or externally. In terms of other assistants on the Colts roster or the coach staff that could potentially be poached for other jobs around the league, we have to keep in mind that a lot of these Ravens coaches are getting hired around the league, from Minter to Harbaugh, obviously, with the New York Giants. Like, a lot of these Ravens coaches with just Ravens ties are kind of seeping out across the entire league. So when you're looking at like Chris Hewitt, for instance, the Colts passing game coordinator and secondary coach, he's someone who I think can make sense reuniting with either one of those guys in one of their locations or elsewhere around the league. So Chris Hewitt's a name that I would certainly watch, but when it comes to defensive staff, I don't think we're going to see much there. Tom Manning, I think, could draw offensive coordinator buzz from the college level, but the college level, I think, has mostly decided a lot of their stuff, so I don't think the Colts are going to lose him there. And then when it comes to like minor coaches on the roster, there's always that threat of, as some of these staffs get filled out, somebody gets a minor promotion elsewhere. So the Colts could lose like an assistant linebacker coach like Cato June or something like that to another location. But overall, I think the Colts are not going to see much turnover on their coaching staff. Again, Alex Tanney and Jim Bob Cooter, it's certainly up in the air with what they're interviewing for. But as of right now, those appear to be the only two threats, with the Colts losing one of their current coaches. But the Colts do have one coaching vacancy as of right now, one major coaching vacancy that is, and that is the defensive line coach. Charlie Partridge, who served in that role the last couple of seasons, is going to be the D-line coach for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish this next season. So the Colts have a vacancy there, and I think this is kind of like the perfect time to have a D-line coach vacancy, because we saw a lot of these legacy staffs around the league fire their head coaches from Buffalo to Pittsburgh to Baltimore, and a lot of really good, well-tenured defensive line coaches became available. So when I'm looking at a couple of these names, like Carl Dunbar in Pittsburgh is going to have his pick of any team around the league, because he is well-respected, has worked with guys like Cam Hayward, Nate Herbig, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith. He's been working with those guys for most of their career. Very well-respected, very good D-line coach, and I think Indy would love to have him here. Jacques Cesare, I think is how you say his name, from the Cleveland Browns, would be another guy that I think could make a lot of sense for the Colts. Work with Myles Garrett, work with Alex Wright, and a lot of really good players there. Tracy Rocker from the Tennessee Titans has a connection with Shane Steichen, and Eric Washington from the New York Jets has a connection with Chris Ballard. So those are some high-level names that are on the market for D-line coach that could make some sense for a team like the Colts, just to get a more experienced veteran name that has served in that role around the league. Jake and I have talked about this in the past on the show, where under Chris Ballard, the Colts have gone to the college level a lot for their D-line coach. Like, outside of Nate Ollie, I think all their D-line coaches have been from the college level, and they've mostly kind of flamed out and not really worked, and haven't really developed the talent, or it's two sides to everything here, but they haven't really developed any of these young players the Colts have given them. So maybe going with a more experienced, longer tenured, like pure NFL guy could be the next route for the Colts. So guys like Dunbar, Washington, Rocker, I think it's Cesare, it's how you say his name, from the Browns. I think any of those guys would make a lot of sense for the Colts, and would be home run hires for what they're looking for. But that is the coaching carousel as of right now for the Colts. We'll keep you updated here with Locked On Nows and quick videos as things get announced. But I think it appears like Alex Tanney's interview with the Giants is going to be either today or tomorrow, and I think Jim Bob Cooter's is on Sunday, and we'll probably hear something early next week if one of those guys got that job. So we'll keep you updated here on Locked On Colts. But coming up, I'm going to talk about some Alec Pierce, because Alec Pierce has been one of my favorite players on the Colts for the duration of his rookie contract. He's gotten better and better each and every season, and now with him set to make $20 to $25 million per year on the open market, Should the Colts invest heavily in a player who hasn't been the number one wide receiver throughout his whole contract? We're going to talk about that here in just a second. But first, tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or without the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can actually meet with local TurboTax experts in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work to get you every single deduction. You can upload your documents and go about your day and get updates right there in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back with your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. And it's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting. Kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Alrighty, Locked On Colts everydayers. I want to thank you real quick for making Locked On Colts your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On Sports, Locked On, the #1 sports podcast network around. And if you haven't already, go check out the new Everydayer clubs. You can catch us audio ad free, and get an invite to a members only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of our shows. Go to lockedoncolts.supercast.com to join or even gift a subscription to that special someone. You know, Valentine's Day is coming up, and I think that's a special gift right there. It's that Locked On Colts Everydayer Club, joining a Discord server with me and Jake. We're diving into some Alec Pierce talk now, and if you guys follow me on my other channel, I did not like a long video, but I did a short video on Alec Pierce and just my thoughts on him. And I'm going to reiterate some of my ideas and just overall thoughts on Alec Pierce here for this segment. He has gotten so much better over the duration of his rookie contract, from a player who in his first 2 seasons, we could see the potential, we could see the flash, we could see what he could become in the NFL, but the production wasn't really there. Just a little over 1,000 yards in his first 2 seasons in the NFL, kind of hampered by some noodle arm quarterbacks for sure, and Gardner Minshew and Matt Ryan at that stage of his career. But for him to turn that flash into the production that we've seen the last 2 seasons, to go from the first 2 years, again, a little over 1,000 total yards, to nearly 1,900 yards receiving over the final 2 years. And honestly, if you put his pass interference is drawn in there as well, over 300 yards drawn from pass interference penalties, he's contributed well over 2,000 yards of total offense to the Colts since 2024. And that is with the carousel at quarterback. That's with him missing 3 games due to injury, and that half game due to a weird ejection as well. So he's missed some time, and things haven't been perfect at the quarterback position, but he's still been very productive. And that's with limited targets and limited shots down the field as well. Only 47 receptions for over 1,000 yards this year, joins Deshaun Jackson as the only player like this century to do that. He's just been an all-around player that's just gotten better and better every single year. Obviously, he has his calling card. His calling card is being the best deep threat in football. I think that's, maybe there's 1 or 2 guys you could debate with up there, but he's easily up there among the best deep threats in football. Great at getting off press at the line. He's gotten better as a route runner over the duration of his career, and he just comes up big in big moments for the Colts, from his rookie season with walk-off touchdowns and big-time catches to 2024 with the game-winning catch against the New England Patriots. What he did against the Jets late in that game, beating Sauce Gardner down the right sideline on a quick snap, to what he did this year, like going against like Seattle, having that back shoulder catch down the sideline, or that mesh catch against the Denver Broncos to get them the win in that game. He has been just a vital piece of this offense, and he's who the Colts want to go to in the clutch when it matters the most. So as of right now, Pro Football Focus had a new projection for Alec Pierce. They projected him to make 4 years, $96 million with $45 million guaranteed. So essentially with the $45 million guaranteed, that'd be like a 2-year, $45 million contract for Alec Pierce. That is so doable for the Colts. You know, I mean, I know the 4 by 96 sounds very daunting and very scary for Colts fans, but with how NFL contracts work, if it's a 4 for 96 with 45 guaranteed, it's essentially a 2 for 45 for the Colts. And that is so easy to do, very doable for them. They would have to free up some money. And we've talked about this like ad nauseum here on this podcast all off season about how they need to move on from the Michael Pittman Jr. contract. But for me, when you compare the two receivers, Pittman has been on this downward progression the last couple seasons. Like it really since 2021, it has kind of been downhill for Pittman, where we haven't seen the deep ball ability. And part of that's because Alec Pierce came in here, but we haven't seen the all-around game from Michael Pittman Jr. He's been very good at the in-breaking routes and just being a tough receiver. But with Pierce, we've seen him go from being this deep ball only guy to being a guy who can win on crossers, who can win on in-breaking stuff, who can win really anything underneath as well. And the way I really break it down with these two receivers is, can Michael Pittman Jr. do what Alec Pierce does? Probably not, especially at this stage of his career with the back injury the last couple years. Like, I don't think he can do what Alec Pierce can do. Can Alec Pierce do what Michael Pittman Jr. can do? Probably at least a good bit of it. I mean, what Pittman does is win over the middle of the field and wins with his catch radius. I think Alec Pierce is certainly capable of doing that. So for me, when it comes to which receiver you're going to allocate well over $20 million per year to on the open market, I think it's going to be Alec Pierce for me with the Colts. And I think the Colts would be wise to invest in the 25-year-old player that's gotten better every year rather than bringing back the near 30-year-old player that has regressed the last couple years. So yeah, Alec Pierce to me has true number one wide receiver potential. I think he's closer to a DK Metcalf and a T. Higgins than he is to the Marquez Valdez-Scantlings and the Diami Brown type players in the NFL. And if I'm the Colts, I'm opening up the checkbook easily for that projection that Pro Football Focus has him at. I know there's been some rumors lately. I think Tony Pauline was the one who said it the other day that Pierce is expected to test free agency. But if I'm the Colts, if it came down to that, I'd probably just tag him before letting him get to the open market. Now, the tag would be 1 year, $28.2 million, which would be quite a bit there. But you can use that to build a long-term deal off of it and maybe give him like a 3 or 4 or 5 year deal, whatever it's going to be, to make sure that he's not playing at that $28 million cap hit. You can just kind of build the market from there. So if I'm the Colts, I don't let him touch the open market because it only gets crazier from there. Use your ability with the franchise tag at the worst case scenario, but try to come to an agreement before free agency hits. I think Pierce is just too valuable to this team. And once they re-sign Daniel Jones and they want to get back to playing their brand of football next year, this whole thing doesn't work without Alec Pierce. So if they were to lose Alec Pierce this offseason, expecting Daniel Jones to repeat his performance this year is already one thing, but doing it without Alec Pierce would be a whole nother thing entirely. So this offense this past season ran through Tyler Warren, Jonathan Taylor, and Alec Pierce. Those are your three core elements of your offense. Losing one of those three core elements and hoping for Pittman or Downs to fully replace it, I just don't think is wise business strategy from the Colts. So if I'm the Colts, after getting Daniel Jones under contract, I think Alec Pierce is the most important aspect of this offseason. And unlike, when they let like Will Fries walk last season, they had Matt Gonsalves waiting in the wings. They don't have a replacement for Pierce waiting anywhere on this roster. It's not like you have a top 100 pick guy coming in here. And even if you do, like you spend one in the draft, expecting a rookie to replace 47 catches for 1,000 yards is just bad business. So I think for the Colts, they need to get this done. This needs to be priority number 2 behind Daniel Jones. You can even argue priority number 1 because Jones feels like a lock at this point. But getting Pierce back is going to be one of the most vital parts of the offseason for the Colts and making sure that he's signed up before he hits free agency. But coming up, guys, we have prospect of the day. I've been jealous of Jake all week talking about these Senior Bowl players. And while I'm not talking about a big need for the Colts, this is a player when watching Senior Bowl film has really blown me away. And I was already a big fan of him going into the week. And that is Sam Hecht, Kansas State interior offensive lineman. But first, if you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. You know how important it is to get that right. So when you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your posts at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach qualified jobs faster. Sponsored job boosts your posts to people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posts directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. So spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of our show get a $75 sponsored job credit to give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Alrighty, Locked On Colts Everydayers. We are back with our prospect of the day, 2026 draft prospect of the day. Jake and I have already done a couple of these, as well as Jake doing all of his Senior Bowl coverage this past week. Big shout out to the work that Jake did, especially with all the snow around the country. Getting down there is an impressive feat, I think, for him, and nothing that, we expect that from our boots on the ground here at the podcast. But there was a Senior Bowl player that stood out to me on film going into the week, and then as I'm watching the practice film, he just kept looking better and better. And I know he's an offensive lineman. The Colts don't really need an offensive lineman, but it never hurts to keep investing in the trenches. And this is interior offensive lineman Sam Hecht from Kansas State. Started at center the last 2 years for them. Was a player where the coaches of the Big 12 absolutely loved him. He was a first team all Big 12 this past season by coaching. He was second team in 2024. 25 career starts at the college level. And when you look at his game on film, he is tiny. Like, he is legitimately tiny, and the Colts have a center like that, right? Like Tanner Bortolini, who is like listed at like 300 or so pounds, but might be a little under 300 pounds. That's what I see when I see Sam Hecht. Like, I don't know if he's actually 300 pounds, but for what he lacks in true size and power, he makes up for it in just the way that he plays, man. He plays with such this savviness and control that I feel like I'm watching an NFL center when I'm watching these games. And especially when I was watching his performance at the Senior Bowl. Like, he is just always in the right position. Hands are where they need to be. Just in full control on his feet. Great balance. Looks like a person out there wrestling. If you've ever seen like a pro wrestler or like someone who's like, all district wrestling in high school or something, the way that they just keep their balance and keep their feet at all times and just how they always look in control of what they're doing. That's what I really see out of this center prospect. And it's one thing that really stood out to me on film. And then when you see the one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl, when you see the team sessions and how he's locking up these future top 100 picks or these future guys who are going to be playing on Sunday, I'm like, look, I can overlook the 290 something pounds because he just makes it work. I really, really love the wrestling style in his game. I just love his technique and his ability to win as a pass blocker. And then in the run game too, he's got great zone tracks and gets to where he needs to be. He's not this overwhelmingly great athlete, but I think at center, it's not as important to be a superstar athlete. Like, obviously it helps, like when we look at Tanner Bortolini, but it's more about the steps you take. It's more about your mind. It's more about your positioning. And I think with a player like Hecht, he's just got long-term viable NFL player in his DNA. You could see it on his college film. You could see it at the Senior Bowl. And I think you're going to see that on Sundays as well. He's a guy who I think is going to make his name for himself come draft time. And I'm hoping, for the Colts, obviously I want him to be there in like round 4 or 5. And you can have your long-term like Danny Pinter type replacement behind Tanner Bortolini, but he probably goes top 100 with how well he's performed this offseason. But we'll see. We'll see. Obviously, there's still always things in play for him potentially being a Colt if he's there on day 3. But Overall, I think he could fit in at center. I think he could play a little bit of guard in a pinch if he needs to. He reminds me a lot of Tyler Biadasz, Tyler Biadasz for the Washington Commanders, who played for the Dallas Cowboys before, and obviously was at Wisconsin as a center a couple years back. Tyler Biadasz, I don't even know if I'm saying his name right, but that's who he reminds me of. A guy who, again, he's not going to overwhelm you with speed or power or size, but just gets the job done. That's what you need to see out of a center prospect, I think, when you're watching film. And everything is just so good about his film. The balance, the control, the positioning, the footwork. This is an NFL center all day, every day. And Sam Hecht is one of my favorite players in this draft. So I'm going to be a much higher on him, I think, than maybe some in the NFL are. But I don't know. I just think this guy's just got Sunday football written in his DNA, and I think he's going to be a very good player. Only 25 career starts at the college level out of 42 games, has experience on special teams. And for the Colts, I think he'd be a great fit in what they do. I think he'd be a perfect utility offensive lineman behind Bortolini in the guards. And if he's there in round 4, I'm all for pulling the trigger on him and just solidifying that interior depth. So we'll see come draft day if he's actually available for the Colts that late in the draft. Again, I think he could go in the top 100 with how he's performed this offseason, but we shall see. But thanks again, guys, for tuning in today to Locked On Colts. We'll be back again next week, so make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Colts to get all the latest episodes. And if you don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on social media. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Colts ad-free, plus members-only Discord server access and more. Head to lockedoncolts.supercast.com to join the club. Thank you all for checking in today, and we'll catch you guys back here again next week.